What is going on, guys? It's Reflex here, and it has been over a year since Kingdom Hearts 3 ReMind DLC released, and for a lot of people, including myself, that was the DLC that solidified Kingdom Hearts 3 just being an amazing game, because some people had some issues with, how the base game ended, the vanilla game of obviously it's been out for a little bit, so I'm not really going to spoil much, but people just didn't really like the ending all too well. And when the ReMind DLC came out, the trailers that were releasing, we seen what the possibilities of that DLC could bring, and a lot of people, including myself, was excited. I remember even watching Afro Senju because he was on the hype train for Kingdom Hearts 3, and when it released and he actually ended up beating the vanilla game, he had the same thoughts that I did. And then when the ReMind DLC was coming out, it was kind of like that whole Hawkeye little meme that's always like, don't give me hope. That's how it was for me. But when he ended up playing it, I remember being so happy because I already, prior to this DLC, already played it. But when he played it, he was like, they fixed my game. And it was so awesome to hear because I don't like slander when it comes to Kingdom Hearts, even though it is warranted half the time. And I remember Kingdom Hearts 3 being this controversial game where half the community liked it and half the community hated it. And then when the ReMind DLC came out, it felt as if the community finally came together and just actually enjoyed the game. Because what this ReMind DLC actually brought to the table, other than the whole Limit Cup boss fights and the secret boss fight, they also just brought a whole bunch of context and cutscenes, fleshed out some just story a little bit more, and gave more context to the ending and why the ending happened the way it did. And it's not to say that in the base game you couldn't really understand it, because I feel like if you paid attention to what young Xehanort was saying, and also just what Yin said and everyone else was saying about the power of awakening, you kind of knew what was going to happen to Sora if he abused the power. But what was good about ReMind DLC is they actually gave a lot more thought to this and a lot more context to explain it more. But also what the ReMind DLC brought to us was the ability to play with a whole bunch of other characters during the Keyblade Graveyard fights. And I mean, it led into a lot of other stuff, like not even just the Keyblade Graveyard alone, but there was so many fights. And then it got to the point where you could play as all the Guardians of Light in one cohesive battle against the Seekers of Darkness, and it was just awesome. That whole entire moment was just awesome to me. And I actually had trouble playing the DLC as well, because I had to play through the whole entire game again to even get to the DLC portion, because of the fact that I think my data corrupted at the time. So it was annoying, but after I actually played through it and got to that point, it was honestly just really awesome to play. Because leading up to the DLC, I do remember thinking like, oh, this is just kind of replaying the same fights with just different characters. But while that is almost the case, it still felt different, and the kind of stakes were a little bit different because you were getting more emotion and more cutscenes from the characters that were actually in the fight and you were playing as. That always ended up leading to Sora finally getting to you, and then you fighting, I think, with Sora. But it was awesome. But then obviously the great part about this is that we ended up getting the Limit Cup boss fights. The callback to Kingdom Hearts 2 with the boss fights that are always extremely hard if you're playing on critical, which a lot of people were. And it was cool to see the whole community always, kind of say, oh, I'm stuck on this boss, and then another person's like, oh no, I'm stuck on this boss, and everyone kind of getting through each boss one by one, slowly but surely, and just having a fun time doing it to lead into the last boss fight, which was Yozora. And fighting Yozora was just awesome, but it leads into so much story-driven stuff that at the point when this came out and everyone was at this part, it blew everyone's mind, because we already knew that Final Fantasy it looked like Noctis. It looked like a trailer for Final Fantasy Versus 13 back in Toy Box in the vanilla game. But they went a step further, and after you win or lose against Yozora, you get this cutscene, which then gives you this little callback to Versus 13 of him sleeping in the car, and then all of a sudden waking up and you see the driver in front of you, which happens to, maybe, we don't know if it's confirmed or not, but it sounds and almost looks like Luke's sword, like quite a bit. But regardless, that was the most just like jarring but awesome little Easter egg to Final Fantasy Versus 13 that I honestly did not expect. That was one thing I did not expect at all, but it was just so awesome to see. And me playing through that and seeing that there was 2 different scenes for winning or losing against Yozora, it had me thinking that I feel like the losing is actually the canon ending to Yozora's story, because I feel like Yozora is supposed to save Sora. I do feel like that's the way the story is going to go. Because I don't know, it's just, I feel like Sora is supposed to be saved this time rather than doing the saving. And I think just, if he beats Yozora, to me it seemed like losing to Yozora was just the canon ending of the DLC rather than winning. And obviously I could be wrong, normally winning is always the canon part, but it just seemed like Yozora is going to be the main key of Riku probably going to Quadratum to find Yozora and maybe get the answers he needs to save Sora. But I don't know. And also, let's just talk about, is it Cole Sprouse or is it Dylan Sprouse? It's one of the Sprouse twins from Sweet Life of Zack and Cody that I would have never guessed was going to be voicing. I think it's Dylan, but I would have never guessed they were going to be voicing a Kingdom Hearts character, but god damn did he do a good job. Because Yozora might be one of my damn near favorite characters I've ever seen in the Kingdom Hearts, like to be revealed I should say, because Axel's always going to be up there, but Yozora just took a different meaning to being my favorite character, because I always wanted, you know, these Final Fantasy cameos, but then you get this original character that takes kind of resemblance of Noctis in a way, in my opinion, but it's just such a cool character. The voice actor is cool. His backstory is so mysterious, but we're going to be diving deeper in future games. I mean, it's just honestly crazy, the future of Kingdom Hearts and what Nomura did to kind of shake the community a bit with the reveal of Yozora and showing that he actually has a major part in the future of Kingdom Hearts. But one final thing that I did not bring up, but I did also enjoy a lot in the Kingdom Hearts 3 ReMind DLC, is the fact that Radiant Gardens showed off Yuffie, Leon, Sid, and Aerith. We didn't see Cloud and Sephiroth, obviously, for obvious reasons. They're fighting, and we need that closure in Kingdom Hearts 4 when we get that secret boss fight. There's no excuse. He knows people wants it. It might be redundant, but obviously people were kind of saying it wasn't redundant too late in the development cycle. So this time around, I feel like in Kingdom Hearts 4 we will get that. But the fact of seeing in ReMind DLC, seeing the Final Fantasy characters back does tell me that he probably intended to show them from the start, but it's just he wanted to show the focus of the story being the original characters, obviously being Sora, Riku, and Kairi, and just showing their battle with Xehanort, because Final Fantasy characters have no part in that. They don't. But the fact that they are fully modeled, they had a specific part, you know, in Radiant Garden, fully voice acted and all that, tells me that they probably were there from the jump. But he was like, there's going to be a DLC for this game. There's just no time for them right now. We'll add them in later. And it fit really well. But I'm wondering now, are we going to see more Final Fantasy cameos again? Because it is the end of the Xehanort saga and the beginning of a new saga, which means that, in my opinion, I feel like now he could go back to focusing, you know, on, you know, the whole game as a whole, not one specific set of characters. I feel like now, instead of it paying attention to only Sora, it can pay attention to everyone, because everyone probably got they got their arcs that they got to go through. Because obviously you had the Restoration Committee that they kind of went through their role. I feel like they kind of finished their role in Kingdom Hearts 1, but they expanded on it in Kingdom Hearts 2. Sephiroth and Cloud has their little arc that they're going through that I feel like should be finished in Kingdom Hearts 4. But I feel like there should be a new arc or just new something with a new cameo of characters. Like if we got a Lightning, if we got a Vincent Valentine, if we got a Bahamut, which actually is confirmed to be existing in the Verum Rex world, which is Quadratum. So he should be confirmed to be in a Kingdom Hearts game with Quadratum. And I think he should be an integral part. I already made a video about this. But I'm excited that the next game, or at least whatever has to do with Quadratum, is going to have a lot of Final Fantasy similarities in there. So I'm wondering if they're going to have, you know, a lot of cameos, or not a lot. Like, I don't want a lot. I only want at least maybe 3 cameos of, you know, these video game characters, these unreality non-fiction characters but in this game. Because of all games to have a Final Fantasy cameo, I feel like this next one should be the one that makes the most sense. So, I mean, I just can't wait to see the future of Kingdom Hearts. But a year in review for the ReMind DLC is just, I mean, it was such a good DLC. It honestly made the game 10 times better. It put it up into my top 3. I think, I forgot what my ranking was. It's either first or second, that much I know. I think I'm a sucker for Kingdom Hearts 1 though, just because of all the memories it holds. But Kingdom Hearts 3 I think might have took its spot after the ReMind DLC. But regardless, Kingdom Hearts 3 is such a great game, and with the ReMind DLC it became so much better. They gave me so much and so much more than I didn't even think we were going to get. The Limit Cut boss fights were amazing. Yozora was probably one of the best boss fights to ever play. One of the harder ones. Obviously, I don't think it holds a candle to Sephiroth and Lingering Will, but it still was very hard on critical. The future of the story regarding what he set up in ReMind DLC, even with the whole kind of talking between Xigbar and Luxord, like that whole little talking point, I'm wondering now, like, who's Luxord? And him maybe appearing in Quadratum is a little bit of an interesting little tidbit that we could dive deeper in if we get more information. But Nomura has made me so excited for the future of Kingdom Hearts, and obviously past the ReMind DLC we ended up getting Melody of Memory, and Melody of Memory set up so much more as well, with not only Kairi, but it set up a new arc between Riku and Quadratum, set up a new arc between Mickey going to Scalad Kylum, and also, you know, set up the arc of Kairi training with Aqua. And there's so much more story to be told. And this just makes me happy to be a Kingdom Hearts fan, because we're nowhere near being done with this game. But let me know down in the comment section below what you guys think of all this. How was your experience with the ReMind DLC? Did you have problems with the base game of Kingdom Hearts 3? Did you end up enjoying it a lot more after Kingdom Hearts 3's ReMind DLC released? Or did you really just not care, didn't play it at all? But regardless, let me know your thoughts down below. And if you guys did enjoy, leave a like, subscribe, and you guys know the drill. I will see you guys later.